Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the Flatirons Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. This show is brought to you by Flatirons Tuning, your source for any aftermarket or OEM Subaru parts. Be sure to check out our store at flatironstuning.com and stay tuned with Flatirons Tuning. Welcome back, everybody, to the Flatirons Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. We're here today with Tasso and DP. This is episode number 112, I think.
Sure.
I'm going to say it's 112. I think that's right. All right, so the topic for conversation today, I've seen this come up more recently, and I think it's because with the used car market, with STIs going up in price, there's a resurgence of people that are talking or debating, does it make more sense if you want an STI to just go out and buy an STI, or should you build your own STI? Get a WRX, a GC, whatever, and then build the car that you want rather than just go out and pick up an STI. And yeah, I think that landscape has changed and it's worth a conversation. So just to kick it off there, what do you guys think? What is your initial thought?
I like the idea of putting my blood, sweat, tears, and various, other fluids from the body into a car like that. Like, yeah. I mean, look at my Forester. Like, I had these, delusions of grandeur that I was just going to make a Forester STI because it didn't come to the U.S. market. Mm-hmm. And so then, now, many years down the road, it's obscene and loud and sits in my garage a lot. But I love the idea that I had some skin in the game.
Right.
Like, literally. But also, because I can take pride in the work that I did. And then, if something goes pear-shaped, I probably had something to do with it, so then I'm accountable for it.
Well, and in that case, you took a platform, a Forester, that came with a turbo engine, but it was not exactly an STI power plant. In the performance that an STI would have was not really in that chassis. Like, there was no options to get an Forester with STI Brembos and that sort of thing, and so you basically built that yourself. You created something that didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
So, Tasso, what do you think?
Build
one? Yeah. I think I am, as somebody that has basically built an STI effectively or close to it as well, I kind of lean in that direction. For a long time, I kind of was of the opinion that it didn't make as much sense, to a certain extent, because if you're going to go the whole way and try and do the transmission swap and the brakes and all that sort of thing, it would be less expensive to just get the STI that started with it. But being able to have your hands in it the whole way and do something that you want to do, there's a big plus to that for sure. So for me, WRX wagon, at the time, the STIs were sedans. I still really like having the space of a wagon, so that was kind of like your motivation with the Forester. That was part of my motivation too. But then beyond that, now, I think that there's an advantage in being able to pick all the pieces and pick and choose what you're putting in there, rather than starting out just with the STI framework. I think now, if you just like the STI, I mean, the STI is an amazing car. So there is definitely a reason to start with an STI. But if you really want to pick and choose and design the car to do something else, I think that's where a lot of the advantage can come from. And Tasso, maybe you can speak to this too, especially if you want to go out and race the car.
Yeah.
That's where actually building something up has some advantages, because what you're gaining by starting out with an STI is a bit less if you're really going to modify the car extensively.
Yep.
Yeah? All right.
Done.
Awesome. Man,
so many words today. You just...
No, so yeah, it's important to think about what you actually want when you're trying to make this decision. The STI by itself is a fine daily driver in terms of its performance level and comfort and stuff like that. It's below the threshold of a performance car as it is already. So if you're going to use it as a performance car, you're going to replace a bunch of stuff anyways, so you might as well not pay for the expensive stuff in the first place. If you just want to own an STI, or you want a nice daily driver, something that's nice and comfortable and can cruise in traffic with the AC on and stuff like that, yeah, go get a STI, because it's great at that.
I mean, to me, I think that's the sweet spot for an STI. Is it is definitely the most capable Subaru out of the gate, like from the factory. And for like an entry level to mid level track car, especially something that you're going to daily drive and then drive it to the track sometimes, it is the most capable. But if you really want to start going beyond, like building the capability of the STI up, then that's where sometimes it makes more sense. It could make more sense to start out with something like a WRX.
Yeah.
What have you.
Yeah, when I first got into this whole thing, and I thought I just wanted just a nice, quick daily driver, something better than my old truck to drive to work. And I live up in the hills, right? So a lot of my commute is twisty roads. What I wanted was an Evo 9. And then those are crazy expensive and hard to find that aren't just junked out. Yeah. So I was like, fine, I'll settle for a STI. And then I found out those were just as expensive and just not necessary.
Yeah.
So I got a WRX at the time because all I thought to myself was, oh, it's got slightly less motor and one less gear. It's essentially the same car.
Yeah.
They're not at all the same car, I think, right?
No.
In terms of OEM cars, the original, and it's not just another half liter. It's not just a set of brakes. It's not just one more gear.
Right.
Every part of the car is slightly better on an STI than it is on WRX.
Yeah.
I think that's an important thing to remember. I have never had an STI, like an off-the-shelf one, so I don't know, right? If I would be happy with that as a daily. I know the WRXs are not satisfying as dailies.
I was perfectly happy with mine for many years.
I would totally be fine with like a base 90s Honda Civic too for a lot of daily. I mean, I'm now in a first gen Legacy that I'm trying to get reliable enough to daily and stuff like that, right? So there's multiple tiers here at work. But think about this too in terms of like not just the Subaru cars, but like the Ford Raptors, right? Like it's you, for the price of a Ford Raptor, though, you could make a much better off-road vehicle than what the Raptor is.
Right.
The Raptor's cool because the factory actually talked to some off-road guys and then took what they said and dumbed it down and made a Raptor. And the STI is cool because Subaru actually let some insane people go off there and make cooler versions of their cars, right?
Yeah.
But the Raptor is not an off-road race truck, and the STI is not a race car.
Right.
And so if you want cool stuff, get the white car, right? Get like the cheap car.
Yeah.
Get the whatever.
The body in white,
Yeah, body in white.
The Raptor is a really interesting analogy there because, I mean, I think like that's even a more extreme difference. Like any kind of standard F-150 to a Raptor. Like, wow, those are two very different vehicles. And I think the STI is closer to the WRX than that. But that's the thing to think about because, for a lot of people, the advantage of getting something like a Raptor is you go to the dealership, you buy it, and it's like probably the people that come in and want a vehicle like that, it's 10/10 of what they want.
Yeah, or more than, right? They want the image, they want the coolness, they want the fender flares.
Right.
Like, oh, it's already got tires on it. Sweet. I don't have to go to my 4-wheel parts and go get these things.
Right. So, and that's, like, I think the STI fits that as well. Like, again, like, for what the STI is, I mean, I think if that's what you want, then that is a great... Yeah. I mean, that's a great package from the factory. But then if you want to go racing and you know that, well, I'm going to start with this STI, but I'm going to take all of this stuff off, and I'm going to have to replace all of this stuff.
Right.
And go back all the way through it. It's like, well, like that's where the calculus starts to come in. I mean, you could like really get down to the nitty gritty and say like, well, you could sell a lot of stuff off the STI to help pay for some of the
but you bought it in the first place and you're never going to make money back unless you're really good at hustling, right?
Yeah, you paid the STI tax effectively once.
Yeah.
Why would you take a loss on all the other stuff?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking like. Just even basic stuff. If you're going to start really tracking the car, like if you're going to put a cage in the car, heck, even if you just want to put a harness in the car, which like a rear hoop or something like that, you're going to have to get rid of the seats.
Mm-hmm.
So the advantage of the nice STI seats, you're not going to be able to take advantage of that. You're probably going to have to take out a lot of the interior, which is nicer in the STI, so you're not going to be able to take advantage of that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you really start tracking the car a lot, you're going to need to upgrade the brakes beyond what the STI came with. So you're going to have to, upgrade the brakes and spend, a couple grand on brakes at least.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like, all these things could be sold to kind of soften that blow. But you're still going to be going through and replacing a lot of stuff.
Right.
Yeah. And you can go out there and drive to the limit of that OEM equipment, but you can also go out there and drive to the limit of a lesser spec OEM equipment too, right?
Yeah.
If that's what your goal is, just to get out there, then go get a Honda Civic. But
that makes me think of something else. The barrier of entry. Like if you want the STI and you want to go and use it, you want to go out there and drive it, track it, but the price of the STI is such a high barrier of entry that, well, I'm going to have to save up for a year, 2 years, some amount of time just to get the STI. That might be another part of that calculation. And I mean, for me, that's why I got a WRX, because I could get the WRX, I could afford the WRX, I couldn't afford the STI. That got me in the car now, and then I started just driving it, and then, you just kind of refine it over time, but it lets you start using a car, start trying to drive, learn to drive to the limits of this more attainable vehicle, and then kind of develop, modify, and have the vehicle grow with you versus just kind of start out at a higher level.
Yeah, it's like it's an evolution of that car, because you start out with base WRX.
Yeah.
Stock, little tiny brakes, somewhat squishy suspension. You go out, have a ball, and you're like, what else can it do?
Yeah.
What if I do this differently, or what if I drive it slightly differently than I was driving it? See where those limits are, and then you're like, well, first driver mod.
Yeah.
Then your brakes and suspension, tires. Start adding in things, just kind of slowly, adding and adding and adding until you've got this car that costs maybe the same as the STI was, but it's so much better on every level. Like Tasso was saying, you make something that's truly great at what it does because you learned with it, and then you have way more fun, like miles per mile, in it, as well as the investment's like, okay, well, it was still $30,000, but I've got 2-piece brakes, and I've got a 6-speed swap and all these things in there that you've done over time, so you didn't just immediately dump $30,000 and then you're like, well, now what?
Right. How important, and I guess we should say we're biased in all of this because we've all taken a car and kind of turned it into what we wanted it to be. But how important is it to have that experience rather than just find the thing and then you never really touch the car, modify the car, change the car. It's just the car largely as it came off the showroom floor is what you have, versus taking the car and making it, improving it in the ways that you want to improve it, making it drive the way you want it to drive. I mean, making it kind of your own. How important is that a piece of the puzzle?
I think we are, as we've talked to in many episodes past, we are the niche.
Yeah.
We are the the lesser of the whole. Because there are people I know that have a bone stock, or one guy added water meth, but that was the only thing he did because the STI was what exactly he wanted, and so he just drives it. He tracked it with us, did all these things with it, just as it was as a stock STI, and he lived his best life with it.
Yeah.
So I think we do kind of exemplify that enthusiast mindset where we want to make it do all these things. It would almost behoove talking to the average Joe, oh, what do you want to do with your car? And a lot of people are going to say, I want to get in, I want to get gas, and maybe maintain it.
Right.
But I mean, even with my wife's car, I take it to a shop. I don't do the service work on it.
Yeah.
But then with my cars, I will put the stuff into my car.
Right, because
myself.
That's your car. That's what you're driving every day. You want to have the experience of actually working on it, servicing.
Right. And her car is really fairly new. It's 2018, and it's very nice. And I don't want to mess it up because
sure.
it's got some extra expenses with it.
Yeah.
That I'd rather have the professionals deal with that than qualifying. But
it's almost opposite. I don't know if I would trust anyone else to build a race car for me. Or I would have to work through some sort of getting to know this person or some sort of vetting process to trust someone else's work.
Yeah.
Because the amount of factory touched stuff or dealership, whatever, that is just not right is, and when that like matters to your safety, that is a big thing. And I think that's one of, to your point, like how important is it for you to build your car? Like the identity of it, the whatever, like a taking it as your own, like your child kind of thing, because you made it kind of thing. I think it's less important to me, as much as you need to be familiar with your car. And if you built your car, then you put your hands on every nut and bolt on that thing.
Right.
And so then you're confident not only that you can fix it when you need to, because you will need to, but that you can build the skills to fix it correctly, or you're confident. You're not sitting there in the car like, shit, I hope that brake banjo is tight, or man, I wonder when the last time someone checked that subframe bolt was, because it was you and you remember it, kind of thing. And
that's actually a huge point, which is if you take a car and you put a lot of time and effort into taking parts off and putting parts back onto the car, doing a lot of work, making the changes to the car, your familiarity with all of the pieces and the nuts and bolts and everything that goes into making up the car goes up, exponentially, versus if you get something like a Porsche GT3, like a basically from the factory race car, and you just put gas in it and you drive it, the familiarity with what was that noise? Did I just hit something, or did something come loose, or is this totally normal? Like your ability to kind of understand what the car is doing goes down. But two, if it breaks, like your skill set, your understanding, your ability to actually, sort out what the problem is, fix the problem, wait, like is this a red flag, like I should pull into the pits right now, or is it's probably not a big deal, or something like that. I mean, it's just that's a very different experience, a very different level of familiarity and understanding of the car, in those two different experiences.
And you have some sort of awareness of what exactly the repercussions are going to be if you continue to ignore that sound on track.
Sure.
Right? Like, because you're aware, like, or you ignore that warning light, like, ooh, oil pressure warning light, whatever,
Right.
Here's some money.
Right.
And you never really have but if it's oil pressure warning light comes on, you're thinking to yourself, man, it's going to be a motor. I'm going to have to buy bearings. I'm going to have to probably get machine work done. I'm going to have to get out these wrenches to pull off that part, and then to pull off this part. And I know I can do this done in 2 days. Where do I have 2 days to do a motor real quick? And you're starting to think about that whole process. Then you're like, well, no, I'm gonna turn the motor off and stop real quick, because maybe it'll save me machine work, and I can get away with putting oil in it or adjusting bearings, as opposed to replacing case halves because you just yeeted some rods, kind of thing. So,
well, and I mean, I think that's working on your own car is one of those things where I think there's a lot of people in the Subaru community that is one of the reasons that they got a Subaru, because they are, relatively speaking, easy to work on. It's very straightforward. Like, you look in an engine bay of a Subaru and you kind of, you know what you're looking at. Everything is kind of clearly there. It's not hidden, tucked away, or put behind, in incredibly tight spaces by certain German engineers that, were designed to function but never be worked on. But there's some people that is not a drive. The goal of learning to drive better, getting in the car, whatever. It's not to also learn how to work on the car.
Right.
Sometimes those can be separate things, but sometimes those can be similar things.
I'm in the car because it's the best package for performance that I need.
Sure.
Like, there's not a better. I'm not paid by Subaru, because Mitsubishis are slower and more expensive, and two-wheel drive cars are slow. And there's just, I'm even in a GD because it's the fastest chassis.
Yeah.
So, for me, that is less important. But that was entirely my thought process. For the most recent race car build was, I had a blank slate, right? I could go to any manufacturer, any chassis, any generation within that, and pick, and then within that, even any model, any starting point, right? And it was very much not an STI I was looking for. I was looking for wrecked Impreza shells, because those are going to be $100 to $300.
Well,
because no one cares.
So you're, let's just circle back just to make sure that people understand what we're talking about here, because so you had an accident with your previous hill climb car, rally car, and so it was not repairable, and so you've now been putting together the next car, the next chassis, and because you rolled the car, like most things from that chassis were not salvageable. Like you have to do a new cage. You really have to take everything out of the car and build up a new chassis. You have to start over.
Yeah, and it was yes, that's a good summary. Yeah, I looked at GC chassis because of the lightness and stuff like that too. But just some of the chassis stiffness stuff and really the overall dimensions don't really change. So you pick up a little bit of weight, but a lot of chassis rigidity, and then also there was a factor in staying, kind of with the same basic shape, because I had a lot of parts that fit it. Right. But it was never even a question in my mind whether to build or buy, because there's just not a buy option for competition at that level, or what I was looking for, or my taste and what I was looking for in the car. So
and even speak to the fact that what you were looking for was a wrecked car, like something with a straight chassis, like you're probably looking
straight
for
enough,
a relatively straight chassis, or something where like it's got a blown engine and 1,000,000 miles on it. Yeah. So like it's a straight car. Yeah. But you're going to be taking out basically everything except for the shell.
I knew I was going down to 1 to 2 layers of sheet metal and nothing that could be removed anymore.
Right.
To put the car together. So there's never even a thought in my mind, I should spend the money on more expensive base car to start building kind of thing.
So, I mean, that relevant to this conversation, that's where, like, you're not looking for a running STI to then turn into a rally car. No. Because the purchase price of the core shell then becomes so much higher that the cost of getting a race car put back together so you can compete again is...
Yeah, right.
I mean, you're probably going to be into your new rally car for... about the purchase price of a
STI.
Of an STI.
Yeah, that is fudged because there's a lot of parts being reused, right?
That's fair.
So like a transmission just needed some repair and it was good to go. So I'm not having to buy a whole other 6-speed swap and stuff like that.
Right. Same with the suspension. And so there was things that moved over.
There's stuff that moved over, and that makes it easier. But I mean. So I thought about this, and even I looked, and this is covered. The closest direct equivalent to the build or buy thing was used chassis from other racing teams or outfits, right?
Sure.
So that's everything from pro drive chassis that are kicking around Europe to ex-Vermont sports car cars, other rally cars being sold and stuff like that.
Which is out there. I mean, there's not as many of them, but they are out there.
And even some of there are weird STI factory chassis that just kind of like pop up every once in a while. Like Sam Pickering has a really cool
Spec CRA.
I'm tired right now. Yeah, it's a Spec CRA, but it was like it had an oil tank in the passenger footwell and stuff like that, because of how cool the RA stuff is. So yeah, there's cool other stuff out there that pops up, and a lot of the work is done. But I had such a specific idea in mind of what exactly I was looking for that not only could I not afford any of the stuff that did pop up, because at the end of the day, it is really cool.
Yes.
But even those had compromises or little things that I would have to do to it. So I started cheap and went with a $300 shell, because that way I can spend that extra $100,000 on grinding wheels and welding wire.
One of the funny things about race cars is once you build one and live with it and race with it, you learn a lot of things that you only know once you are running a race car. Like you posted pictures on your Instagram recently about going down for the new car and getting fitted for the seat placement for the cage, for instance.
Right.
It's like on our rally car, our Pikes Peak car as well, like with the type of seat that we're using, with the halos, the head support. Man, the placement of the seat is such that it's really challenging to get in and out of the car. Like once you're in there, you're fine. But like to get in and out because of where the cage runs and where the head supports are, it's challenging for me.
Yeah.
So like little things like that, where like, hey, if we ever do a cage again, we're definitely not going to do X, Y, or Z. You know, we're gonna make that better. You know, and you don't know that until you get in and live with the car. So sometimes, like, you're looking at a pre-built race car, like maybe the cage is not the way that you'd want it to be, or you'd be making a compromise on seating position again.
Yeah.
Or like you've run 3 different suspension setups or brake setups or whatever, and they're running one of these that you realize, well, I'm not going to use that. You know, so.
Yeah, there's, I mean,
It's a
multiple
similar
things
problem
there,
to
right? Like,
getting an
for
STI.
one thing, just as many, potential, just as many dealership techs as there are out there that really don't know what they're doing. There are just as many race car building outfits out there that don't know what they're doing too, right?
Sure.
There are really good ones, and if you have the chance to like get to know people, then you can figure this stuff out and you figure out who to trust or not. There are race car building outfits that I would trust to buy a used race car from, and then there are plenty of race cars out there that I would not.
Yeah.
And like, I'm happy with the car I'm building because I know every step that's going into it, and I trust this process, right? And part of that is like positioning my seat for me is a unique challenge. I'm not especially tall. I'm only 6 feet tall, but I have a really long torso for my height, and so I have the torso of like a mid 6 foot, 6 to 6.5 foot tall person. And so I've always had problems getting my head away from the roof, getting myself low enough in the car.
Right.
And like we're mounting my driver's seat like almost straight to the floor of the car, just to give a lot of headroom up here, and also get me as low as possible for center of gravity and all this kind of stuff like that too.
Yeah.
But
well, like the other thing that I think of is you're now going to use a pedal box, whereas before you've been using the factory pedal box and clutch mat and brake master cylinders and stuff. Even that is a learning thing. Like I think we've only ever used the factory pedals assemblies in any of the cars that we've run, but if we're building another car, like now really know how much of an advantage it can be from driver position, from seat position to run a pedal box, so that you're not locked into where your feet have to work the controls. You can now move that back a couple inches, and that can make a massive difference in terms of like space that you have, getting the seat position so you can get in and out of the car much more easily.
Center of gravity stuff too.
Yeah.
I could only really get about probably 4 to 6 inches further back than I was in the last car, but that's
a lot. It's not insignificant.
That's not insignificant.
I mean, even like just to make it easier to get in and out of the car,
a couple inches,
even an inch or two would make a big difference. But
let's
maybe bring it back to like the
STI versus other stuff.
Well, I'm just thinking like, let's say you want to just build a car that you're gonna drive on the street, but you want to take it to the track sometimes. Like, would you still lean towards getting an Impreza or a WRX or something like that, and then modifying it versus just starting out with the STI?
Legacy RSRA.
Well, sure, if you can find one,
Yeah, if you find the unicorn.
It does not exist.
No.
I would totally just start with something more base, like I did, and bring it to the levels that I want, because it's going to still be a street car. Like I can still put the car seat in, or fold the seats down and put things-ish in it, because it's still a Subaru, but it is boxy, so I
usable.
can put stuff in it and haul it around. Whereas like if I bought an STI, it's great. There's $30,000 and it's fun, but there wouldn't be, like we're talking the experience. Like a lot of what I focus a lot of things on is the customer experience and the end user experience. Yeah. Would I have had the same fun if Subaru had brought the Forester STI to America? Probably not. Like, like there's something that was really fun about that 444 gear set that I shattered because I'm a hooligan, and but it was a lot of fun. I sent it. But starting at like square one and like making it exactly how I want, I think is the part that was exciting to me, and I hope that's exciting to like this next generation of drivers and things. Is hey, I can start with this, and make this. And even with like green speed being what it is, you can still take a street car and make it really, really fun without adding infinity Brazilian horsepower, because you can improve steering response, braking response, handling. The visual aesthetics are all fine and dandy, but
I would actually even argue that taking power off the table makes it even more important or beneficial to starting with a car that is less capable initially and learning how to make it more capable, because there's a lot more information about building power than there is about getting the suspension set up on the car, dialing and handling, getting your wheels and tires to really work.
Look at the misinformation on chassis stiffness out there about Subarus. Like, you gotta buy this subframe and make sure you run your U-brace, and other places don't have U-braces, and we'll buy this. Everyone in the world had some sort of weird underbody bolt-on thing.
Yeah.
It's just dumb.
Yeah. Well, and weight's a part of it too, but and learning to drive, really learning to drive the car and figuring out what works, what doesn't, where the car needs improvement, where you as the driver need improvement. Bringing, an STI for most of us is probably more car than we really need, or it's such a good chassis that you're going to get in there, and it's going to be hard for you to get to the point where the car itself is a limitation for a while. But because of that, it's harder to figure out what those limitations are, and then what is really going on here? What is really going on? Do Subarus really understeer? Is the understeer really as bad as everybody says that it is? Or is there more to it with this understeer thing than
Yeah, there is.
That is a complicated one. I think that gets applied just kind of blanket across all Subaru models and STIs or whatever.
Head gaskets.
Right. Well, even if you look at the Subaru or the STI suspension, Subaru changed it through the years, and some of them have slightly better setups than others. And I think even Subaru realized that they really needed to make the front suspension work a little bit better as the STI developed through the years. And so on and so forth.
Although
but
I think the Bug-Eye WRXs are one of the more neutrally handling cars. I'm gonna argue.
Well, the STI suspension was probably optimal from 04 to 06. Then it went down
at that little rear sway bar. It had the smaller rear sway bar, and that's dumb.
Only in the WRX. The STI had square setups.
Did it really?
Yeah.
I don't know.
The STI was always a square setup, but it started out as 20, went down to 19, and then there was an offset because of the multi-link rear suspension starting in 2008.
I think 2008 plus isn't relevant.
Okay. Well, then that's a whole other topic. But there's just an advantage in kind of figuring out, making changes like an anti-lift kit, changing the front suspension geometry, improving things, and really seeing what the difference is and learning what those things are, because then now you're really getting to the nitty-gritty of what makes the car handle, what makes the car stop, all those sorts of things. Yeah. That you just kind of miss if you just jump into a car that just does all of that naturally. So,
I agree.
I'm sitting here trying to think how much time we have left.
A couple minutes.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Now Tasso's 2 minutes.
Yes.
No, I'm trying to think, is there a car, an OEM-ish, or a special model that is worth buying versus building? And I'm going through trying to think if there's any car you could have actually got the homologation brake kits and stuff like that from the Group N era. I don't think anything came with any of that stuff. It was on the parts catalog for homologation purposes. But even go to all the RA stuff.
Yeah.
Well, RA's got nice brakes, didn't they?
Yeah.
6-piston.
Yeah, they did.
I think what it comes down to, because we are on a time limit here, so we need to wrap this up. But I think what it comes down to largely is what your goals are doing with the car. What do you want out of the car? What do you want out of the experience of owning the car and driving the car? Do you really just want to kind of do a little bit with it and have it be something that you're not working on and fiddling with that much, or do you really want to get in and learn it?
Yeah.
And then how far do you want to go with the competition or with the track driving that you're going to do? Is it something that's just going to be for fun, or is it something where you want to continue to take it to a higher level and build?
If you want an STI, go get an STI. If you want to build a race car, get a cheap car.
I think they're both good options, but
I want an STI.
Yeah, I would love to have an STI.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I
just hasn't been in the car.
Don't really want an STI. Like I like what I've got.
Guys.
Yeah, we're weird. We keep it square.
Well,
21mm sway bar.
Yeah. Well, I gotta say, like a wagon versus a sedan, like there's some things that a wagon can do that a sedan just can't.
Go slow.
Like everything.
It's more aerodynamic.
Wagon life.
Yes. All right. Well,
we just stopped the podcast with my fist fight.
All right.
Not my pretty.
In the comments below, first, let us know what you think. Do you think it is better to build your own STI or to buy one, and why? And then,
why? How many ways can you say that sedans are better? I don't know. It's just, yeah.
And
if you want to get a minivan, go get a minivan.
Are sedans better than wagons, or wagons better than
sedans?
There are
turbo 4-wheel drive minivans
and
to solve all your Forester problems.
So. No.
The turbo 4-wheel drive minivan?
That sounds
weird.
On Subaru.
Want to get...
Well, I guess the Forester is a turbo 4-wheel drive minivan.
Kind of is.
Especially now.
But now, for sure.
Oh, well, no, minivan. I can't think of the minivan. Like SUV, sure. Like tons of them. But what are you thinking here? Or are we going all the way back to the Astro Turbo?
No. They're out there.
All right. If you know of a turbo all-wheel drive minivan, also put that in the comments.
But get excited about building your guys' cars out there. It's a whole lot of fun and very rewarding.
Yes, absolutely. If that's what you want to do, there's no better way to go than that. All right. And with that, we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you very much for watching. Thanks for your support as always. Check out OTC Racing because Tasso is building this new rally car. He's chronicling the build. On his YouTube page, on his social media, so definitely check that out. So, thanks very much for watching. Thanks for your support as always. Until next time, stay tuned with Flatirons Tuning. Thanks everyone for tuning in to the Flatirons Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. Once again, we'd like to let you know that your support is what makes this show possible. Be sure to check out our online store at flatironstuning.com for any of your aftermarket or OEM Subaru parts needs. And as always, stay tuned with Flatirons Tuning.